think I've blocked out not only the bad memories, but some of the good too. I know when I was younger, I wanted to be submissive because I had my eye on the man I ended up marrying. And I knew if I wanted to fit in his family, I was going to have to be obedient and do all the things. And I really set out with good intentions to be that person. And I was for a while, but I don't think we realized how set apart we were from the real world. We knew to a point that it was very different, but you don't realize how different because that's really all you know. You see what everybody else is doing, but you think they're wrong, and so you kind of cleave to what you were taught, and you just think that that's the only way. So I don't know, the older I got, the more I realized that, you know, this is a man's world. They don't value women, and something just felt off. Internally, I think I was fighting and rebelling against some of it all along. I just didn't recognize that's what I was feeling. So I started digging in. Do you? We're doing a documentary.
Oh, okay.
She's doing a documentary now this year, and she's getting my voice out there.
Awesome. That is awesome.
And I say my voice, but I mean the voice of many women.
Well, definitely.
Yeah, it's not just my voice.
Definitely.
And so that's awesome.
That is really awesome.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about it.
Yeah. I can't wait to see the finished product.
It'll
Even
be
though
great.
I'm a little camera shy and all that, I'm decided,
Sometimes you just gotta, like, the camera's not there.
Yeah,
just gotta,
right.
because I'm that way too.
Yeah.
All the pictures you see of me with my grandkids, it's like.
Well, I try my best to get selfies with my grandkids, and they look so horrible that I end up deleting half of them.
Oh my gosh.
A cleaning business isn't what I would have chose really, but it's a means to do some of the ministry I want to do. Like I provide women with work. I also give them a safe space to talk if they have life problems and stuff they're dealing with. And so in that regards, it's kind of a twofold thing for me. It's a means to get the income I want to eventually have a safe house for women. But while I'm getting there, I can still help in smaller ways. Oh, goodness. Here's the rewards of cleaning. Sometimes we get free food. My kids are actually who helped to start us. Our kids helped start us on a journey, searching for the truth. And I'll be forever grateful for that. When my children started asking me, why do we have to do this and why do we have to do that? That was when I really started asking myself, well, why do we do what we do? And I started searching for answers, and of course it's all supposed to be a biblically based religion. And I turned to the Bible. I got a study Bible. I couldn't find answers in that Bible for a lot of the things we did, because it was all about how you dress and like things that made no sense at all. And we didn't focus on the heart. And of course we were taught to be kind and honest and all that, but a lot of the people couldn't live out the true joy. It was all focused on tradition and doing things a certain way. So I realized then and there that was not a satisfactory answer. So I know what, I'll give this food to a food bank, because my kids are growing, I don't eat this. Yeah, that'll be a great way to use it up. We spent many hours here on the front porch shelling peas and snapping beans, and I had a swing hanging on that end. And one of the favorite things the kids like to do was one person would start a story and they would take it to a certain point, and then the next would add to it, and we just go around and tell stories while we worked, and anything to shorten the job, make it seem more fun. The two youngest girls, they went in the barn a lot, and they had up on top of the granary, they made a little living room, and they fixed up hay bales and stuff to look like a sofa, and they got things from my kitchen and took it out there to make their own little kitchen, and they spent hours out there playing and having fun. And the older women were told to teach the younger women, you know, and like make sure they had all their dresses made properly and that they did all the right things and that they weren't reading worldly novels. And when I was probably 7 years old, somewhere along in there, my older sister left the Mennonites, and that was a very traumatic time. I was not old enough to understand why she left, and she just packed her bags and left one Sunday when we were at friend's house, you know, and we came home, and later that evening everybody was like, where's she at? And we started looking, and I think Mom went to her bedroom and realized that some of her clothes and belongings were gone. We found that she had decided to leave home, and it was as though she died. Such weeping and wailing and mourning. And closer to Newmarket than Timberville, but we do have a Timberville address.
I was 21. Couldn't wait to turn 21 so I could get away. Mom would always fuss about either my hair wasn't to suit her, or my dresses weren't long enough, or this was wrong or that was wrong. And I'm like, it ain't gonna take me to heaven to have all that. Blah, blah, blah. We fight all the time about that. It's like, if parting your hair in the middle of your head and stretching it back till you can't get your eyeballs shut, ain't gonna save me. I'll be going to hell then, I guess.
I guess it was confusing to me. My parents was just like so sad, and they wept and wailed. I had never.
Death, probably.
Yes, it was worse than if she had died. Really, I had never seen my dad cry until after that, and then he just wept. And,
Did he really?
yeah, sitting in church that Sunday, they announced that she was no longer a member. That was when he bawled, cried, whatever. Yeah, it was traumatizing, I guess, as near as I can
Well,
say.
it was to me too, because
Yeah.
there was all my siblings at home, and I didn't get to see any of them. Because once I walked out the door, they didn't want me back unless I come back.
Under their terms.
Yeah, went on the front bench and confessed what I done and blah blah blah. So I done a lot of drinking, a lot of crazy stuff in my day for a while.
They believed to a point that we did need Jesus as a Savior, that He was God's Son and born of a virgin and all those things, but they didn't quite go so far as to think that you could know you were saved, that if you were good enough, you might be, and you could hope that you were, but you really had no assurance. So that was scary, you know, it kind of hung over you as like, am I good enough? And so you tried to follow all the rules and be all the things, and it was exhausting, and then you still didn't know. I have 5 sisters and 3 brothers. This is me. She probably wouldn't have been in the picture anyway. She was more, she would always go to Mom and Dad with anything. I remember being told that I was not to dare tell our parents anything. That was always put out there. You can't tell Mom and Dad or you'll be in trouble. I would love to just honor my parents by thanking them, and I know they're not here to hear it, but they were both very good people, very hardworking. They They loved on their family as best they could for the circumstances and everything. When my oldest sister got married, this is the dress I wore to her wedding. Isn't that adorable? Yeah. I was 5 years old. I'm sure Mom probably made that. Mom or maybe the older sisters. I don't have any memory of who made it, but that's what I wore. So that's a relic. That was my wedding dress. The wedding day was just one big day of celebration at the bride's home. Even though they're very simple and plain, it still was a very significant day or time in my life. And I was at my future in-laws' home, which added to was the bishop. It was the bishop's house, and that added to feeling like you had to be just so-so, you had to act a certain way. Just to have fun and be yourself would have been considered somewhat inappropriate. After I got to know him a little better, I think I felt more relaxed around him than his own children did. There was a time in my life for that. That did change when I started calling things out. There was a woman about my age who started doing taxi work for the Old Order. She worked her way into my heart very, very quickly. I was at a very vulnerable stage in my life, and I guess I needed someone who understood and heard. And she started asking questions about what I believed and why I believed what I did. It set me on a search to find, what do I really believe? And she also came to me one day and said, Vesta, has it ever occurred to you that maybe there's sexual abuse in your community? I'm like, no. And she told me a couple instances of young women she had picked up and taken places, and namely, some of them were the school teachers at the time. My husband and I were also school board members at the time, so we worked closely with the school teachers, and I found out one of them in particular was very depressed and suicidal at the time. It became pretty apparent that there was abuse going on. I ended up taking that information to my brother-in-law, who was a pastor, and my father-in-law. And my brother-in-law heard me, my father-in-law not so much. At some point, I was made aware that they thought I had put stories in these girls' heads to make them think they had been abused. And I realized at that point that I really didn't have help and support. I was made aware that there was other instances that they knew of and had kept it hidden. The remark was even made, you know, we can't have this out in the public. It puts a black mark on our name. And that was devastating to me, because you can keep things in the dark, but the black mark is still there. I felt very betrayed, I think would be the word to use, and disappointed. Just like, I thought these people were real. I thought I could trust them. I thought they wanted truth. I thought they wanted to live clean lives and would have no parts of any type of abuse. What I know now is that there was a lot of verbal and emotional abuse happening all the time, and unfortunately sexual abuse as well. They were in total denial. They didn't want to face it. Partly because they didn't know how to face it. They didn't know what to do about it. Because we were so closed off from the outside world, outside resources were not welcomed. I opened a can of worms they didn't want opened, and it was just a hard time. I remember saying to my husband, there has to be more to life than this. It's just the same old cycle repeated day in and day out. There has to be more to life than this. And he looked at me like, what do you mean, you know? And I think it kind of scared him, because he didn't know what I meant. I didn't really either, but it just felt like we were in a hamster wheel and no way out. The further I get away from it, the more bizarre it sounds when I try to tell somebody what it was like. Because it's like, whatever. and well, let's just say to go out and get a motorcycle. That would be unheard of to do that within the Mennonite circle. The other day to the dentist. And I was tempted to chicken out because I hadn't really been out much in traffic, and I was so glad I went. I got along fine, and I may have stalled a time or two, but nothing major. All right, here she is. That is bright. I'll move it like this. Oops, wrong. I did not mean to do that. Oh gosh. Yeah, that first round was a little scary because the gas still wasn't doing right, and it was like, to get it to go, I was having to give it more gas than normal, and then she wanted to take off too fast when she did get. Yeah.
So again, I had this sense of peace. Okay, so we sent out the letters. That's how I notified my dad and my brother-in-law, two brother-in-laws actually that were in the ministry then. That's how we notified them, was through a letter in the mail. As soon as that was received, we knew the repercussion would be, huge. But so it was like, okay, we get a phone call that we need to come and see you. So we're like, okay, we're here, and so we get a visit from, like, I think at least three families came that day. And it was almost like somebody had passed away. That was kind of the atmosphere. But I just remember having this sense of peace that it's like we're doing what we need to do, and freedom is huge. Just like it's. I guess you have freedom or you don't have freedom, if you will. That's the other part of freedom, I think, in this whole thing is that, to be able to give Vesta her freedom in, be able to feel like that's not something that the old order setting, there's more of a hierarchy thing, and it's like, the woman has some say, but she's not totally given freedom. If I had to do over, I would be like, we're just gonna keep being family.
Now, let me show you what this is for. We haven't been using it, but you put them in there and you can just let it right down in the water. And then you let it on there, and when you're ready to pull it up, you can check it. We haven't made any Easter traditions since we left the old orders. My mom would always help us dye Easter eggs, and I don't know how she didn't get in trouble with this, but that was a very cute, precious memory. Something that kind of surprises me that she did, because in that setting, you just didn't do a lot of outdoors decoration. We didn't put out the Easter bunnies and all of that because Easter was not about that in their minds. And maybe originally, I know what the real meaning of Easter is, but this is the fun part for the kids and all. I'm a person who likes the truth. I like, don't tell me one thing and mean something else. So when I found out that they knew there was sexual abuse within and we're keeping it covered up and we're not dealing with it, I was angry. I was disappointed, I was hurt, I felt deceived, just all of the emotions, and I didn't know what to do with it. And I realized I couldn't be a part of a community that didn't protect its people, especially women. I mean, I want men to be protected too, but a lot of the abuse was coming from men, so that gave me a passion to help women. we realized that what we had been told and taught all our lives wasn't all necessarily accurate or the truth.
I guess what was intended to be for Vesta, it turned out to be a thing actually was turned toward me, like, you know, just this deep soul searching like that. So
It set him on a journey of personal growth, so looking within and evaluating what do I really believe. But I will say this, you gave me a voice in that too. You said, I think the time is right if you're ready. Are you good with me sending the letter? And I'm like, yep, if you're ready, I'm ready. It looked daunting, it looked scary because we had been told that the world was not a good place. It was full of evil people, and yet we knew that not to be true because there were feed salesmen, there were neighbors, there were people that we interacted with. That should have been enough for us to know that that was false. I often do wonder what I would have became, who I would have married, what my life would be like, if it would be, not that I want a different life now, you know, I'm happy where I'm at and, you know, feel like we have so many advantages that we didn't before. But yeah, I can't help but think of those things sometimes, like, what would my life have been like? Would I have even gotten married? Would I have traveled the world? Or, you know, what would I have done? It was very hard, I think especially hard for my husband to pull up and move. Well, he was caught between me and his dad. I think I maybe mentioned that before. He was raised to be a yes man. You know, you did what you were told and you didn't ask questions. And his personality molded well to that. Mine didn't so much. So it was really hard on him. And looking back, I realized how hard it was on him. He wanted to hear me and hear my heart, but there was a lot of fear. My teenage kids helped with that a lot because the questions they asked really caused me to stop and think. And also the taxi driver we had talked about at first, she asked me questions about my belief and why I believed what I did, and that in turn helped me also to start thinking, and all of that happened kind of about the same time. Also, as it ended up, she used me as well, took advantage of one of my kids, and it's heartbreaking because I trusted her, and I also learned a lot from her, and I value what I learned from her, but then when she turned around and used it to her advantage, it's very hurtful, very hurtful. I mean, she kind of became a perpetrator herself, which is often the pattern that happens. And while she denies that, she felt like she was healed. The evidence says otherwise. It's really devastating when abuse happens, but it can also be very freeing to go ahead and acknowledge it and work through it, not as a way to get revenge or hurt those people back, but as a way to release them from what they did to you. And it releases something within yourself, and I think that's what this former taxi driver has not been able to do. And it's really sad to me because there's so many people who experience abuse in one form or the other. And one of the girls who I'm really good friends with now, we were always good friends, but she and her sister were her sister especially related to me and told me, hinted to the fact that there was abuse going on in their house. She wouldn't admit it so much then, but several years ago she and I had a conversation, and at that point I was still downplaying or minimalizing the abuse I had suffered. Mine was more emotional and spiritual abuse. She had experienced that and sexual abuse. And I said to her, you know, I feel like what you experienced was way worse than what I experienced. And she said, no, Vesta, stop. Stop right there. I experienced it both. And she said, I am here to tell you that the spiritual abuse is way more devastating than the sexual abuse. And I was like, what? Wow. And it was at that point that I started owning what had happened to me. And I just remember going home and sobbing my guts out at what had happened to me and what I had experienced, and realized that it was nothing, it was okay to say that yes, I have been damaged, and yes, I was hurt deeply, and to acknowledge that, and to acknowledge it was a huge step towards my healing. I think it's just in the last number of years that people are realizing how important good mental health is and how real being mentally ill is, and it's not just a notion or laziness. In my community, it was considered laziness, and you just needed to get over yourself and get up and get to work. I was suicidal at one point, and while I didn't really want to end my own life, I made kind of an attempt as a way to say I need help. It was when our fourth child was born. After he was born 2 weeks prematurely, and he didn't start off very well. I was overworked, and he was fussy, and I didn't get much sleep, and I just got to, it was some postpartum blues as well. I didn't understand that really too much, and it was just a whole number of things that led up to that. I was not heard when I tried to explain why I did what I did, and they actually made me make a public confession in front of the whole church and say I would never do it again. Yeah, they just don't understand mental illness. I still love them, especially my family. I love them deeply, and it makes me sad to think that they can't live their best life because they're choosing to stay stuck there. But nothing I could say will change that. I tried in the beginning when I saw the light, I tried to share it with them, and they were just all closed off to it. But if any of them would come to me and say, Vesta, I'm unhappy, I'm so sorry for how we did, even if they didn't say they were sorry, if they come and said, I need help, can you help me? I would say, absolutely. I would do anything for you. We don't have to live stuck. We don't have to live in oppression and be morbid and sad. We can have a full life. We can live and actually do life without having this heaviness. I want to say thanks to both of my parents for everything they did for me. I value everything they taught me. I understand and learned from their mistakes and don't hold anything against them. I'd also like to honor my husband and my children, all of them, for bearing with me through all the hard, through all the ups and downs. And I know I was not always a present mother figure or wife figure because of the trauma and everything that I was dealing with in my personal life and trying to find my own way and what I believed and everything. But I love them all so much and appreciate and value who they have become and the fact that they are so forgiving towards me and the mistakes I made, and they're learning from my mistakes, and they're doing such a phenomenal job raising their own children. I'm so proud of them. To have hope in your life is a beautiful thing. To feel hopeless, I remember many, many dark days of just feeling hopeless and like nothing would ever change. And I just want to give other people hope and point them to a life of freedom that happens here on earth. It doesn't have to be after you're dead. You know, you can live so free here and enjoy the journey.